But first, he is the creator of such groundbreaking TV documentaries as The Civil War, Jazz, Baseball. His latest on PBS is The War. Ken Burns. Ken.
Hey, Del.
How you doing?
Big fan, big fan.
Well, I'm a big fan of yours. You truly have created your own art form in your latest, The War, about World War II, another great one. It really gives me a lot of hope because 18.7 million people. I don't know if folks know how big those numbers are. On PBS, CBS would be thrilled to have those numbers. So there are some smart people out there, but I understood that you made this documentary partly because you read that kids in high school today think in World War II that we were on the side of the Germans.
Yeah, I heard this.
And we're not?
No, I hate to break it to you, yeah. They think that most of our kids think that we fought with the Germans against the Russians.
So why do you think people are so stupid?
We're a consumer culture. You know, after 9/11, we weren't asked to do anything. Franklin Roosevelt asked our country to sacrifice tremendously. Now we're just asked to go shopping. If you go shopping, it's hard to remember which side you fought in 60 years before.
Right, and I think the title of your documentary really is telling about that. It's just called The War, because back in those days, I don't think anybody ever said to each other, what are you doing these days? What do you mean? The war. We're all doing the war. And it seemed like people sacrificed a lot more. Certainly they gave up a lot more material things. But do you think, it looks like they were happier. Do you think they were?
Yeah, I think today we're all independent free agents. You know, we drive in our car alone, we listen to TV and radio alone, we surf the net alone. We're acquisitive, we don't want to give up anything, and yet we feel a poverty of spirit. Back then, we gave up everything. You know, we made 3 million cars in 1941 and only a few hundred for the remainder of the war. We did without, and yet we strengthened some essential core of who we are. It's a testament to that generation, not just those who fought, but those who stayed behind and worked together. We were in it. We had the same range of diverse political opinions, but we were not sort of slaves to the consumer culture that we are now. We're not slaves to our own narcissism.
But I've heard people say that even though they are called the greatest generation, and I've heard this from actual people in that generation who said, look, we weren't until the war came along.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Do you think if a war of that magnitude, if a calling of that magnitude, because certainly Americans, they may not be that bright about a lot of things, but they get it that this war that we're told is World War III is not World War III. Do you think this generation we have now would rise up and reach those heights and become another great generation, or do you think they don't have it in them?
I think we have it in us. You know, it's hard to say, but we haven't been called. After 9/11, we were asked to go shopping. You know, who knows what we could have been able to do. Maybe in the intervening 6 years, if we'd really applied ourselves, we would have freed ourselves of dependency on foreign oil. We might be able to have served our infrastructure where our bridges aren't collapsing, our levees aren't failing. We would have figured out how to get a trailer to New Orleans in less than 3 months. We were able to do so many things.
You are a dreamer. One thing I was very interested to find out was that these people who you interviewed, these Americans who fought in this war, some of them on the home front, they're in their 80s now. And you said that you couldn't have made this 10 years ago. They weren't 10 years ago willing to disclose so much, to open up. Why is that? What changed?
Well, you know, most of the interviews were done by the co-director, Lynn Novick. I did a handful of them, and I think nearly everyone that we spoke to were just now realizing at the end of their lives that they were ready to talk. They had come back from this war, they had seen horrible things, they had done some horrible things in some cases, they had lost good friends. There was nobody they could really describe what happens to war. War is a horror, and nobody, when they said, what did you do, really wanted to find out the real answer. And this incredibly, admirably reticent generation just sort of shut up. And, you know, in 5 years, we couldn't make this film, Bill. I mean, they're going to be gone. And the Second World War would become the province of historians, and no matter how good they are, they're going to abstract it. And we will have lost that ability to get right at that moment. So, prodded by grandchildren, prodded by their kids, they're beginning to speak, and the things they told told us, give us an access to war that is, I think, new. Like we would hear, "Pop, you never told us this before," and you realize you were there at the birth of expressed memory, and that's a pretty great moment. And we just got out of the way, Lynn and I just got out of the way of their stories and let them narrate the Second World War.
Yeah, and they do a hell of a job. And I noticed a lot of them talk about the fact that they did not want to make friends, because you make friends with another soldier and the next day he's gone. And yet I hear the soldiers now in Iraq say, well, you know what? I don't know if I believe in this mission, but I want to go back there to be with my buddies.
Yeah.
Is that a paradox, or is that a difference in the two wars?
No, I think it's the same. We found that even in the soldiers in the Second World War, you know, some are motivated to join up out of patriotism or cause or whatever, but what the Army needs to do, what the military needs to do, is turn you into a professional killer. Let's just be really honest. That's what they're there for. And when they get there, they need to get a kind of unit harmony. They need to be caring about their fellow guys in the trenches with them, and that bond is as tight as anything else. And one guy in our film says that, you know, he didn't believe the Why We Fight films. He just knew that they were the aggressors. I just wanted to keep my, you know, head down. I wanted to save my buddy next to me. And it was only when he ended up stumbling into a concentration camp that he said, oh my goodness, maybe this actually was worthwhile. Maybe this was, as Dwight Eisenhower said, a crusade.
But I wonder whether the kids who are fighting over in Iraq are going to discover the same thing. This was worth fighting for. I don't think they are. I think all they have to fight for is their brothers.
You know, I think you're right. To West Point, the flag is perpetually at half-staff there. All the kids are going to Iraq at some point. We showed clips, very tough clips, and you begin to realize that the compact, the thing that allows us to enjoy this conversation, the things that we do in our lives, that there are young men and women who are willing not only to fight the necessary war, that I believe the Second World War was, but also the unnecessary wars, and that is an amazing sacrifice and amazing thing that they are willing to do.
Well, I would love to see you do a documentary about the Iraq War, but by the time that one's over, we'll all be dead. And we, of course, have a war coming up with Iran that you can work on. But thank you for this one. Ken Burns, please join us again on this show.
Thank you, Ken
Burns.